Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dr. Gilbert Hosts. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that many people want to know a lot about and ask lots of questions about, and that is nutrition and Parkinson's disease. And my guest today is Jessica Schroeder. She's a registered dietitian nutritionist with expertise in Parkinson's disease. And so that is a rare breed, and we are all eager to get information from her on how to eat our best with Parkinson's disease. And we're going to touch on topics such as what foods help with certain non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's, what's the best diet for Parkinson's, how to manage medications, and much more. Jessica will be answering your questions live, so get them ready. So now I'd like to formally introduce my guest. Jessica Schroeder, RDN, is a registered dietitian nutritionist, and she is owner and CEO of Expedition Wellness, which is an all-inclusive wellness business based in Iowa. The mission of Expedition Wellness is to positively influence the health of society by creating a personalized path to whole health while providing compassionate guidance for each individual journey. And they do this through individualized nutrition education plans, personal fitness training, mental health counseling, and nourishing fresh meal options. Thank you so much, Jessica, for joining me.
Hello. Thank you so much, Dr. Gilbert, for having me today.
Fantastic. And now I know people are so eager to hear what you have to say, so I'm going to pass the floor directly to you. You're going to demonstrate some key food selections for various conditions that are common in people with Parkinson's. So take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So I have chosen 5 different complications that I hear all the time when it comes to Parkinson's and some food options to go with that. We thought it would be so much more fun to have you all see some ideas and see some options that go with a lot of these complications. Of course, I have a very short time today, so if you have additional questions, we can follow up with that later on as well. So we are going to start with fiber or constipation, sorry. So constipation, we actually need a lot of fiber when it comes to constipation and alleviating constipation. So I hear this all the time that constipation is a big issue. A lot of that comes from the medication, maybe not as much movement, all that kind of stuff goes with that. So one of the most important things you can do is consume more fiber. So fiber comes from our fruits, our vegetables, some whole grains, all those rich in fiber are going to be, your apples, your almonds, your edamame. How many of you have ever had edamame before? So edamame is super high in fiber. It's a soybean, so it's really, really great for you in other ways as well. And then we have water. So water is one of the most important things you can do to get more or loosen up your stools and get things moving. And I feel like it's such an underrated thing that everybody can do. I can't tell you how many people I talk to every single day that are not drinking enough water. So water can help get your bowels moving as well. And then magnesium. And magnesium is in actually a lot of those things I just listed that have fiber as well. So we're going to take a look at this plate that I have here for you. And what I've done is I've created a snack plate. So I think it's really important to understand that you don't have to get just fiber from a meal. I think it's really important to have fun with your fiber. So I have some smoked salmon here. I have an apple, some carrots. I have roasted chickpeas. I don't know if any of you have ever had that before, but it's a fun snack. I love even traveling with that and taking it on an airplane. We've got some almonds and walnuts there, some roasted edamame, and we've got some multigrain crackers. So lots of fun options to keep your bowels moving, but have a little fun with it. And this is something you could just have out on your counter and just kind of snack away at it all day. Obviously, that's a lot of food, so don't feel overwhelmed that you need to eat it all at once. All right. So our next plate is going to be orthostatic hypotension. So I know many of you suffer from this, and a lot of it is also medication related. So this is when you stand up and you feel really dizzy, or you feel nauseous, or you feel a little off. A lot of that comes from orthostatic hypotension. And one of the best ways you can help with that, again, is water. I will probably emphasize water on every single one of these plates. But water is so important for that, but also sodium. So sodium is in pretty much everything we eat, but I thought I'd show you a fun way to do it in a little bit healthier way through the food that we're going to show you. Electrolytes. So our four main electrolytes are sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. And electrolytes can really help you get started for the day. I actually recommend a lot of my clients to have electrolytes in the morning when they wake up, especially for anybody who has any of the dizziness or nauseousness. This can just really help settle your stomach for the day and help get you feeling good and going for the day. And then also focusing on small, frequent meals. I love breaking meals up into smaller amounts and having them, every hour to 2 hours even. I mean, I know that can seem kind of tedious when you're talking about a different schedule of eating, so frequently, but it's going to help with digestion as well, and also help you just make sure you're getting nourishment throughout the day. What I will say is do not skip meals. That is a big one. All right, so let's take a look at this plate here. So we've got a delicious veggie-loaded turkey chili. I can't wait to share the recipe with you. It's one of my favorite healthier versions of chili. And here in Iowa, it's been a little bit cooler temperatures, a little rainy. So I actually made this for my family last night, and they were excited for me to make it and then share it with you today. So then we have some cornbread. So here in Iowa, and I know this is different all around the country. Some people, believe it or not, eat cinnamon rolls. I think this is like a Midwestern thing. Some people like cornbread, some people like saltine crackers. So you can sub out your favorite carbohydrate with your chili if you'd like. I just showed cornbread with it today. And all of those different carbohydrate options to pair with chili actually all have sodium as well. So you will be able to get your sodium from that. The other thing I want to mention is like why is chili going to be higher in sodium? So chili uses a lot of canned goods. And so you have tomato sauce, you have canned beans, you have canned tomatoes. So all those canned goods are going to be a little bit higher in sodium and really help you get your sodium up to alleviate that orthostatic hypotension. All right. All right, next up is unintended weight loss. So with this, what our goal is just to really get you a lot of calories with little bit of food, because sometimes the reason why we're not eating is just because we can't get enough, or why we're losing weight is because we are just not able to get enough calories. So let's eat foods that are really dense in calories. So one of the biggest things that a lot of people can do is eat peanut butter. Peanut butter is actually high in magnesium as well, so that's another good one. But it also is high in healthy fats. So it's an easy way to get a lot of calories and not have to eat a lot of it. So that's really good. You get more bang for your buck with it. So healthy fats, you can also add olive oil to a lot more, or avocado oil to a lot more of your meals. And that is also a way to just increase the calories very quickly. Another easy way to add calories is another fun way, I think, is with honey or maple syrup, or I use agave nectar sometimes as well. And all of those are going to be really dense in calories and help you get those calories up without having to consume a lot of food. Because I think a lot of people, when they're having unintended weight loss, just get really overwhelmed with all that they need to eat in order to stop losing weight. So I say just focus on keeping it simple and focus on, what are some of those dense calorie foods, and nuts and oils and all those other things will be really great for you. So I'm going to show you this plate. So this plate has a peanut butter roll up. So I know it's a new take on peanut butter and jelly. It's actually one of my new favorite things. I'm also a big outdoors woman, and I eat peanut butter jelly tortillas a lot, and they keep me full for a really long time, and so I really enjoy having them. But what an easy way to just get your healthy fats and even some fiber from the tortilla and some fruit to go with it. You're actually checking off all the boxes that we just talked about for constipation and orthostatic hypotension as well. So it can really check off multiple milestones there. Okay, this is a big one. So the next one is dietary protein interaction. I get this question all the time, and it's something I'm honestly very passionate about, because protein is one of the most important macronutrients that we can consume, because our body cannot make all of the protein that we need. And that is really important. So you have to consume it. And if you are not consuming because you're afraid of how it will interact with your medication, then that can become troublesome. So what happens when we don't eat a lot of protein? Well, we have more falls. We lose muscle mass at a much faster rate. We might have more fluctuations in our blood sugars. And honestly, we might feel even more hungry, which would actually be a good thing for some of you. But it can be very dangerous. And so it's really, really important to make sure that you are consuming all of your protein every day. So one of the things I wanted to emphasize was not eliminating protein, just adjusting it to the right timing with your medication. So what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, you wake up at around 6:30 in the morning, okay? So you're going to first and foremost drink a lot of water. Water, water, water. Drink that water, and then you're going to take your medication. And then you're going to wait about 30 minutes. That's not too long, right? So about 30 minutes, and then you're going to eat your carbohydrate, or like, let's say half of your breakfast. So your carbohydrate, in this example, I have a beautiful oatmeal with some fruit. So we've got some strawberries and some blueberries. So you're going to eat that carbohydrate, and then you're going to wait an hour and a half. Okay, you're going to let that medication absorb about an hour and a half, and then you're going to have your protein. And what we have here for protein is we have 2 eggs, and then I have some little chicken sausages here. So total right here, you're going to be getting about 22 grams of protein, which is a great amount to start your day off with. Of course, we'd always love for you to have a little bit more, but as you can see, this is a lot of food. So this becomes breakfast part 2 is the protein portion, and breakfast part 1 is the carb portion, which is what you can have around 30 minutes after you've taken your medication. So something to help you get your protein, because it's very, very important to get your protein, but also learn how to break that up. I will also be having an entire example of a day for you written out with how you should take your medication and then plan your protein around that. All right. And last but not least is delayed gastric emptying. So one of the key parts with this is, number one, we want to make sure that we're eating smaller meals so that your body can digest it a little bit easier. Think about when we go out to eat or we eat a really big meal, think about how full we feel and how that just kind of sits in our stomach. Well, that's kind of the story behind gastric emptying, is that your gastric emptying has slowed down. And so a lot of what you're eating is just sitting there and it's not moving like it's supposed to be. And so it's really important to make sure that we eat smaller amounts so that we can give our body a chance to catch up with all that. The other easy thing that you can do is eat ground up meats instead of whole meats. I know for me, when I eat like a ground beef or a ground turkey or something like that, I'm going to have a much easier time swallowing even. So for those of you who maybe have swallowing issues as well as digestion, it just helps to have that ground up meat. Same thing for veggies, making sure that you are cutting them up, making sure that you are, even, I don't want to say like blending them, but cutting them up really well so that you can digest them even better. Doing steamed or cooked veggies over raw is also another easier way. It's much harder to digest whole vegetables versus steamed or cooked or whatever style you would like. So what we have here today to show you for the plate is a delicious pumpkin soup. I really wanted to go with the fall theme today. So we've got a delicious pumpkin soup, and this soup is so easy to make. It literally took me 5 minutes to wrap up, but it is just a can of pumpkin soup. I used some bone broth to get a little extra protein in it, and then a little bit of butter and a little bit of honey, and that is it. And then we topped it with some green onions and some crushed up almonds, so it was delicious. And we've also got some cottage cheese here, and then I have some little chicken bits. And one of the things I get asked a lot is, how do I, get all of these healthy foods if I can't like even cut foods very well because of maybe tremors or different medication issues. So one of the things that I recommend is actually buying chicken that's already cut up so that you don't have to cut that up on your own. And then the cottage cheese is going to be an easier protein to also digest. And then soups. Soups are making that so much easier for you to digest as well. And those are our plates for today.
Hi. Oh my goodness, that was amazing. Lots of delicious options. I was taking notes, lots of great recipes, and we're
Good.
going to be able to provide all those recipes when this is posted on our YouTube channel. We're going to add all that so that everyone will have access to those recipes. So thank you so much. That was amazing. We
Yes,
have
excellent.
questions coming in right and left. So we're going to start with our audience questions right now and see how many we can answer. So people have picked up on a bunch of the themes that you emphasized. The first one is water. So Pat asked the question, you mentioned water. How much water do you recommend? So we can start
Great
with there
question.
and take it away.
Awesome. So yes, great question. So I recommend starting, especially if you haven't been consuming a lot of water, starting small. So maybe starting with maybe 40 ounces a day or 64 ounces a day. But first you have to kind of know where you were starting at, right? So I recommend measuring how much water, just track it for a couple days, measure how much water you're typically consuming. And then from there, set a goal of increasing it by 16 ounces each, every couple of day or every couple of days, or maybe each week, increasing it. And because you don't want to feel uncomfortable, like you don't want to get to a point where all you're doing is going to the bathroom constantly, or you feel too full because you're drinking too much water all at once. So gradually increasing. The ultimate goal would be about 80 ounces for most people. Again, it depends on the weather. It depends on how much sweat you have each day. Those type of issues as well. So just make sure to gradually work up to that. And also remember that H2O is H2O. I get the question all the time, does coffee count as water? It does not. H2O only. So making sure that you're getting the minimum of what I would say 80 ounces a day would be a good goal to shoot for.
Great. So Suvi asked a question. She said, oh, she doesn't have a lot of the non-motor symptoms you've talked about, but she does have urinary issues. So would you just talk a little bit about the intersection between having to drink a lot of water, but somebody who constantly feels like they have to go to the bathroom? Any advice there?
Yeah, so I think that that kind of goes off of what I had just kind of mentioned, but just to kind of take that a little further, is that when you are trying to get enough water, making sure that you are doing it gradually, as far as like increasing, doing that gradually, but also throughout the day. I recommend, trying to space out your water throughout the day so that your body has a chance to like work it through. And so you're not having to be in the bathroom constantly. So just like we said earlier with the food, making sure that we're spacing out the food to have little bits throughout the day, really try to do that with water as well. And you'll find it less overwhelming, both with how much you need to drink, but also with how much you're in the bathroom.
Perfect. Thank you. Another theme that is coming up quite a bit is sodium. You discussed how increasing your sodium, increasing your fluids can help with that orthostatic hypotension, which is often what drives the dizziness that accompanies Parkinson's disease. Carol asks, what about using sodium pills instead of increasing your sodium with food? What are your thoughts on that?
You could most certainly do that. But I am a big fan of getting that type of nutrient more naturally, if at all possible. Now, I did mention some electrolyte options. One of my favorite electrolyte options is called a salt stick tab, and it actually has all of your electrolytes. So I kind of caution against doing just salt because just salt alone isn't necessarily the answer. And so it's really important to make sure you're getting all of your electrolytes. So making sure that whatever option you choose also has some of those other electrolytes. I mentioned, I'll review them again. So it's sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. And they all work together. I always like to say they're a group of best friends and they work best together. So if you just have sodium and you don't have the other friends there, then it's not going to be absorbed as well. And so we want to make sure we're actually getting that absorption to happen.
Fantastic. So another theme that you talked about is protein, and protein being extremely important. And many people are asking some version of the question, what about using meat specifically as a protein source? Is that recommended, not recommended? Would you look for non-meat sources of protein above meat? What are your thoughts on being a carnivore?
Absolutely. Well, I think there are lots of things that you have to think about when it comes to being a carnivore because it's not for everybody, and that's okay. I think it's important to decide what are your, beliefs in meat and maybe how other, ways that they affect the world and affect our body. But I am a big fan personally of moderation and consuming meat, protein, but making sure I'm getting a variety. So especially when we're talking about maybe the Mediterranean diet, which I know many of you have probably heard a little bit about, we're emphasizing more fish and getting protein more from fish and beans and peas and lentils and nuts. Those are going to be some other options, but there's nothing wrong with incorporating some pork and some beef and some turkey and some chicken. I live in a state that our primary export is pork. And I grew up many years ago, I was on a pork farm. And so I grew up eating a lot of pork. It's really important to know that you could have leaner versions of pork. So pork chops, pork loin. I love a good pork loin to put in the oven with a lot of veggies. It's a great way to get a lean source of protein. Same thing with beef. I think both pork and beef get a bad rap. And, do we want to consume them every day? No, not necessarily, but every protein has a place in our diet.
Thank you so much. We have a great question from Lynette. I don't get hungry. How do I eat when I have no appetite?
I would say to kind of answer that, number one, how much movement are you getting? Sometimes getting a little bit more movement, if you're able to, of course, or if you need help getting that movement, make sure you have that assistance as well. But making sure that you're getting a little bit more movement, that can be helpful with getting your hunger stimulated and getting that going. I would say also, again, having smaller meals throughout the day and just making yourself kind of eat little bits versus like a big meal. Because I think a lot of times when we're not hungry, looking at a big meal does not look as appetizing. And so having a smaller meal could really help with that. Sort of like that snack plate I showed for constipation. That would be a great way to just kind of snack throughout the day on little things, and at least you're getting something. The other thing I would suggest is doing like a meal replacement or protein shake. A lot of times we tolerate just some quick liquids, so at least it would be some calories so that you're making sure to stay nourished as well.
Great. So we have a question from Cynthia, which touches on something that I get asked about all the time, and that is the issue of dairy and Parkinson's. Now, there is some research out there, some papers published that people with Parkinson's shouldn't eat dairy. There are other sides to the coin of arguments that isn't necessarily the case. You did show some dairy in a plate. What are your thoughts about dairy and Parkinson's? And I can give my opinion as well.
Yeah, I'm very much that we can eat from all the food groups within moderation. If you're eating dairy, with every single meal and like multiple times throughout the day, or you're having issues with it, like bloating, or maybe, if you're having constipation, maybe watch how much dairy you're consuming. But if you're not seeing side effects from dairy and your belief system goes with, consuming dairy, then there's nothing, in my opinion, wrong with it. It's a matter of making sure that you are timing it out properly with your medication, making sure it's not causing you ill will, and making sure that you're just consuming it in moderation.
Great. So I just would love to just add in two words there. There have been these epidemiologic studies that suggest that people that eat dairy may have an increased risk of Parkinson's. Just so you should know, those studies are not the end word on the matter. And there are many reasons that connection may have happened that isn't a direct cause, that that the milk or the consumption actually caused the Parkinson's. There may be an association that it does not link them directly. So we don't want to sort of disparage dairy across the board, especially since dairy is a key source of bone health in our society. So we have the vitamin D and the calcium, and fractures are such a big problem in people with Parkinson's. And so we don't want to just shut off that spigot of improving bone health without more data. So that would be one of my answers for Cynthia. So thank you, Cynthia, for bringing
Absolutely.
that up. We have so many questions. It's really kind of unbelievable how many people are asking. But Ilona is really hitting on another one that I get asked about all the time, which is how bad is sugar? Artificial sweeteners are not a great solution. Sugar replacements are not a great solution. But is sugar so bad? What are your thoughts on sugar?
Kind of my same stance as I've had with all the other things is as long as we're consuming it in moderation. And what types of carbs and sugar are we consuming? Sugar is not always the same. Like carbs, sugar is always a carb, but not every carb is always a sugar, if that makes sense. So it's important to make sure that we're not just filling our day with refined sugars, such as like a donut or, a bagel or some of those other carbs that are not going to add actual like good nutritional value to our day. But are those things that bring us joy? Yeah, sometimes they do. So I think it's important to find moderation and have some of the good carbs like your apples and your fruits and your starchy vegetables like your potatoes. And we're going into squash season, and then I showcase the pumpkin. That's a healthy carb as well. We've got quinoa, brown rice, whole grain tortillas, things like that. Filling your diet with a lot of nourishing foods that are going to help bring value. But I think it's important to still have joy as well. And so when you have like those nostalgic treats and things like that, it's important to have those things into your day or your week, but just make sure that it's moderation. And by moderation, I mean we don't need to have them every day. We don't need to have them multiple times a day. Maybe once a week, or pick a certain treat every week or something, to look forward to. So no, they are not bad. We need carbohydrates to fuel our body, and so it's important to eat carbohydrates. But like I said, make sure it's in moderation.
Great. Good advice for absolutely everyone. That's great. We have a question about leg cramps. Do you have any dietary recommendations for leg cramps?
Absolutely. This is a favorite one of mine. I happen to also be a marathoner, and so I know leg cramps very well. Maybe not from the Parkinson standpoint, but from a runner standpoint. And it's very important. Again, that comes back to electrolytes. So electrolytes are going to help with that. Now, I hear so many times like, oh, go eat a banana or get your potassium. It's not always potassium. And honestly, many times it's not potassium that's the issue. It's actually sodium. So that plate I showed about orthostatic hypotension, actually increasing your sodium, that will actually help with leg cramps as well. But remember, it's important to get all of those electrolytes because they're all best friends. So that's where having an electrolyte supplement, such as a salt stick tab, or if you just need a quick something, some Gatorade or Powerade or water that has electrolytes added to it, you got to kind of go with what you have accessible to you. And sometimes those are some quick options. You could also add like some lemon or different fruits to your water and squeeze the fresh juices into your water. And that can help get you some natural electrolytes as well. Add some sea salt. And that's an easy way to fix that.
Great, thank you. Bill asks, in terms of the unintentional weight loss that you talked about, would you recommend drinking Boost or Ensure?
Absolutely. In whatever you have accessible to you, there are lots of different brands. One thing I think it's important to understand is that there are different protein, or meal supplements meant for different things. So if you're trying to supplement an actual meal, then I would definitely recommend Ensure Boost. If you're just needing like some extra protein, or you're just needing, something to supplement like a snack, then that's where I would do an actual protein, maybe shake that is not super high in carbs and is just really focusing in on the protein. I would say the Ensure and Boost are also going to have more calories as far as the unintended weight loss goes. So you want to make sure you're getting more calories. So if you go with just a regular protein shake, it might actually be good to add more to that. It just kind of depends on if you want to mix your own and do like a protein powder and then add like some Greek yogurt, or sometimes people have to add ice cream, in order to get enough calories because it's just so hard to get the calories. So yes, lots of different options there.
Very good. Thank you very much. So another food group that people struggle with and hear a lot about all over the internet is gluten. What are your thoughts on eating gluten, avoiding gluten?
Again, just like all the others, I don't recommend necessarily avoiding it unless you feel that you have some health effects from gluten. And if you feel like you do, I would recommend going and getting tested. to see if you have an intolerance or maybe are full on celiac. If it causes bloating, it could be a specific grain or a specific type of gluten that's causing that. But if you think about it, if we're focusing on those clean foods like the oats and some of the other grains like the tortilla and whatnot, those are going to be much cleaner options than let's say like your bagel or that's like a gluten overload. And sometimes our body just can't tolerate that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Kind of the simpler foods, the closer they are to how they came out of the ground, is often the way to go, as you're suggesting.
Absolutely.
Doug asked a question that I get asked all the time, and I can even anticipate your answer. Alcohol. People want to drink a little alcohol. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, hey, we all like to have a little fun sometimes, right? There's no reason that you have to cut out alcohol completely, but much like all the other things, again, in moderation, but also making sure that you know exactly how that alcohol affects you. I know how alcohol affects me, but I'm also not taking any medications. And so it's really important to know how that alcohol is going to interact with alcohol and how it's going to make you feel so that you know where you're at with that. Also making sure to stay hydrated because alcohol does dehydrate you. So making sure that you're still keeping up with your electrolytes and your water in order to stay hydrated if you're going to have alcohol. I would say, 2 to 3 drinks a week is going to be what we would consider moderation.
Great, thank you. Robert asked a great question. I don't know if you have an answer for this. I'm not sure what the answer is, but let's see if you've been asked this before. Any diets that will help me sleep better?
Ooh. I would say the answer to that is kind of back to this is kind of a good question actually, because it's a culmination of all the things I've mentioned today. It's making sure to eat throughout the day. It's making sure to get your protein, making sure to consume your carbs in moderation, making sure that you're not eating too close to bedtime. So making sure that you're giving your body time to digest your food. So approximately 2 hours is what you want to do. So like, let's say you want to go to bed at 9 o'clock. So then I would make sure you're done eating your dinner by 7 p.m. in order to give your body time to digest that. So I always remind my clients that gravity helps us digest our food. And when we go and we lay down and we lay flat, then our food just sits there. That actually can cause issues with sleep. And so let's make sure that we give our body that time to digest our food fully before we decide to go to sleep. Also making sure to not have a bunch of carbohydrates right before bed, because think about the effects. Carbohydrates are energy, so they're going to give us energy. And so they can possibly cause you to not get to sleep. So making sure that if you're going to have a snack before bed, it's not ice cream, but maybe cottage cheese, something a little higher in protein and lower in carbs.
Okay, great. We're having a lot of questions, and you've definitely touched on this, but maybe to try to bring it together. A lot of people asking about specific diets, the Whole30 diet, the Heart and Soul diet, the Keto diet. What are your thoughts on kind of these maybe trendy diets or diets that have been put together and people sort of want to follow them? What do you say when people ask you about that?
It's a hard one because I understand the like glitzy part of these diets because they're very attractive, right? So you hear like, oh, well, you can lose this or you can lose this much weight or you can do this or, oh, they'll give me a plan. But the thing is that plan is generalized for people. It's not necessarily personalized to each person. And I work with clients one-on-one and I'm developing personalized plans for every single person. And I can tell you that every single person is different. Their routines are going to be different. The types of foods that they like are going to be different. And why should you have to conform to a diet? The diet should have to conform to you, is my opinion. And so whatever you choose, make sure it's a good fit for you. And what I would say for most people with Parkinson's, the Mediterranean diet is going to be the best way to go at this moment. And really, that's just encouraging a lot of the same foods I've talked about today. Making sure to increase your plant-based foods such as vegetables and whole grains, nuts, beans, peas, and lentils, and making sure to choose those lean proteins and then healthy fats and oils. So if you're incorporating those foods most of the time, you don't need to follow a specific diet. Making sure that, because that is the Mediterranean diet, if you want to call it that, but really it's just healthy eating. And, then throwing in a piece of pie every once in a while or something fun like that, or a drink or of alcohol, making sure you find that balance. And instead of following a plan that tells you to not do any of that, because you need to live your life as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's excellent advice for everyone. A lot of people are asking about supplements. Somebody mentioned CoQ10, and obviously there are multiple other supplements that people may come across. What do you recommend to your clients about taking supplements along with the food that you've discussed?
Yeah, so I think, again, just like I love creating a personalized plan for people, also personalized supplements is kind of the new wave of the future, in my opinion. And I think, again, we shouldn't have to conform to what's out there. Like, we should be able to personalize like what a person needs. Now, obviously, that's the future. That's not quite there yet. But a good multivitamin is always a great way to fill in all the gaps from nutrition, like that you maybe just can't get in because maybe you don't have a big appetite, or maybe time, or maybe your caregiver can't come help you make food that day, and so you are struggling to get your food. So it's important to make sure that you are getting a multivitamin that just kind of fills in those gaps. As far as Parkinson's goes, I think CoQ10 is a great one. I also think vitamin D is a really important one. I know here in Iowa, we're heading into the winter months, and that's a big one that we will want to focus on increasing, because vitamin D is a sunshine vitamin. And when you have less light overall, I mean, that's for all of us, we want to make sure that we are getting more vitamin D.
Thank you very, very much. Jeffrey asked a question. What about if you have diabetes and Parkinson's? How should you eat? What approach should you take?
Yeah, and actually, it's very similar to what I've already discussed. The important part with diabetes is to understand that you don't need to completely take out carbohydrates. Actually, you need carbohydrates, but you need them in a, spaced out way. So maybe every 2 to 3 hours, you're eating a serving of carbohydrates. So you're eating it more balanced throughout the day. What that does is it helps keep your blood sugars more stable so that you're not having those huge spikes and then drops and then spikes and then drops. So it's important to make sure you always pair a carbohydrate with a protein, which can get tricky when you're also taking carbidopa levodopa. And so that's where having a routine and writing it out and making sure that you know when you can eat based on your medication, but then also then for you with diabetes, making sure that you're getting a carbohydrate before you take your medication or after you take your medication.
Okay, great. Thank you. One thing we haven't really talked about, although it clearly is part of a lot of the foods you've mentioned, but we didn't use the word yet, which is antioxidants. So
Yes.
many people asked, what foods contain antioxidants? Are they good for people with Parkinson's? What should I eat to get them? What are they?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I love antioxidants because they are very important, and we need them to help take that oxidative stress, away from our body. So it's important to make sure that we're getting the antioxidants that helps with inflammation. And, with any kind of disease, a lot of it is created from inflammation, right? And so the antioxidants are going to help decrease inflammation. So fruits and vegetables, think about lots of color. That's going to help. Those are all going to be high in antioxidants. So your berries, I love berries because think about how deep of color they have. They're just filled with nutrients. That's why I wanted to make sure I featured them today because they're one of my favorite fruits, very high in antioxidants. I also love your deep green leafy vegetables. So I didn't have any on my plates today, but I do think that deep green leafy vegetables are such a great addition to everyone's day. And they have many of the nutrients that we need, but also a lot of antioxidants. The pumpkin soup I featured, that is going to have a lot of antioxidants in the pumpkin. So again, think of color. So things with color tend to have more antioxidants because they get that color from the sun. So it's really important to make sure you're just filling up with lots of color. Eat a rainbow.
Eat the rainbow. Fantastic. Another issue we have not touched on yet, which is what are good foods to serve somebody who may be having some swallowing difficulties?
Yeah, so that is very similar to my delayed gastric emptying plate because one of the things you want to make sure for swallowing is having that ground up meat. Having a soup tends to help swallowing issues. as well as adding like a sauce or something to the food to help the swallowing become a little easier. And again, back to my big theme of drinking water, making sure to drink water before, during, and after your meals so that you can help lubricate and swallow easier as well.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So we have a couple of people who are interested in the microbiome and Parkinson's disease. And, there's so many different research studies out there that suggest that perhaps the microbiome of someone with Parkinson's is different than other diseases or people who don't have Parkinson's. Certainly the final word is not out there at all. The research is ongoing, so we don't know exactly what it is about the microbiome that does or does not support having Parkinson's. But what are your thoughts on using foods to support the microbiome, to help people with their symptoms? Any thoughts on foods and the microbiome?
I would say one of the biggest things would be kind of going back to my plate number one with constipation and really focusing in on fiber. And because fiber, is also going to have some prebiotics, which is good for the gut microbiome, as well as probiotics. So that's going to come. I didn't feature yogurt today, but yogurt is a great source of probiotics. I actually brought it along, but I don't have it out to show you. I actually love kombucha. And so I love fermented foods to help also with the gut microbiome and just helping with digestion in general and going to the bathroom. I recommend that a lot actually as like a natural option for helping get things moving, but also just for helping with bloating and helping, when the gut microbiome is off, that's what causes bloating and that's what causes all these other issues. So if we can get to the root of it and what's causing that, and focusing in on the prebiotics through different fibers. One of my favorite vegetables that's loaded with prebiotics is called jicama. It's actually supposed to be pronounced jicama, but our American slang, it's spelled Jicama. And so it's just filled with prebiotic fiber, and that is also going to help with the gut microbiome.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. We had a number of people who were asking for clarification about protein and medication intake. And I wonder if perhaps you could review that just to solidify that information for many people who were still asking questions about those various topics.
Absolutely. So the key factor when it comes to protein and the interaction with carbidopa levodopa is that you want to make sure that you are waiting to have your protein source. So again, to review that, that's going to be your meats. Your dairy has protein, so you don't want to necessarily have yogurt with granola before you, or right around when you take your medication. You would want to wait. So I think it's important to, and I'm happy to like create a list of all the foods that have protein. So then you want to just wait an hour and a half after you take your medication in order to eat those proteins, and then wait, at least an hour and a half to 2 hours before you would take your next dose. And like I mentioned earlier, I do have a routine kind of written out, a sample routine that incorporates 3 dosages of medication and then how to work the protein around it. But the key is an hour and a half to 2 hours, both right after you take your medication, but until you want to take your medication the next time.
Okay, fantastic. And we'll be posting Jessica's recommendation on the YouTube channel when this video is posted as well. So I want to, there's a very active chat that's going on right now. I just want to clarify a few things that people are raising in the chat. The first is that people are raising concerns about dairy. We had a question about whether people with Parkinson's should eat dairy. So just to clarify that, there are many studies out there that try to correlate various environmental interactions with Parkinson's disease. Dairy is one of them. So there is this study out there that some people may know about in which dairy is, the consumption of dairy is correlated to an increased risk of Parkinson's. But as I mentioned, that is not necessarily a causative. It's not like you eat dairy causing Parkinson's. There's this
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's association that we don't quite fully understand. So it is not a reason to cut dairy out of your diet. So I just wanted to clarify that. And there are, of course, two sides to anything that somebody might be mentioning in the chat. A question from Yunki that we just want to clarify in terms of what is the difference between sodium intake and intaking salty foods. There may not be a difference. Jessica was talking about the salt. We often think about as sodium, but there are multiple electrolytes that are important for people and for sustaining good nutrition. And so when you think about what with those things that you need to intake, it's broader than just having sodium chloride, which is salt. So that may be the distinction that we need to highlight again as well. So I just wanted to just
Absolutely.
pull out some of those things that Jessica has already talked about. So we have a great question about ancient grains from Karen, quinoa, millet, tiff, which I don't know what it is. What are your thoughts about those grains, using those ancient grains?
Oh, absolutely. I don't use a lot of those super ancient grains in my day-to-day life, but they are going to be very high in fiber. They also tend to have more omega-3s, which, as we know, is great for brain health and for our heart health. But as far as like you can only use ancient grains, I wouldn't say you would have to, but if you would like to use them and they work into your day, absolutely. I think that's a great option.
Okay, fantastic. So another question that I think we hear quite a bit about, and you did touch on it a little bit, and then maybe you can elaborate. What are good foods to use if you are having some motor difficulties, if you're having tremor, if you're having difficulties preparing the food? What would your suggestions be to help?
Absolutely. So I think making sure to purchase foods that are already pre-cut. A lot of our grocery stores these days, you can buy a lot of vegetables pre-cut. You can buy the steam in the bag veggies that are already going to be cut. Making sure that you are aware of your own abilities and what you're able to do or what your caregiver is able to do, and making sure that you accommodate that. So the grocery stores have the options there. It's just a matter of buying them, right? And so not eating vegetables because you can't cut them should not be an excuse. There are plenty of options out there, and ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. That's what your caregiver and your families and different friends are meant to help you do that, right? I would also say with like meats and proteins, buying them pre-cut. So that chicken I featured was a pre-cut chicken. You can buy different meats pre-sliced as well. I know that there's like a sirloin steak I get at Costco that is pre-sliced even, which is really nice. There are lots and lots of options out there, but making sure, most importantly, that you're aware of your abilities, and then finding the options in your store that you have access to, so that you can make sure to get all the foods you need.
Fantastic. So we are really nearing the end to our question and answer session. So many amazing questions. We have a few more. We just want to get to really try to address all the ones that we have in the time that we have. So we have a great question that just came in from Nas, which is, what about foods to help fight fatigue?
Ooh, that's a good one.
That is a
Yeah, so I would say my answer to that would be going back to eating small, frequent meals. Because a lot of times we feel fatigue when we are skipping meals and we're not eating enough meals throughout the day. That can be part of the fatigue. Believe it or not, when we eat too many carbohydrates, that can also cause fatigue. It's kind of this fine balance when it comes to carbohydrates. Carbohydrates help provide us with energy. But sometimes if we get too much and we're not eating the right proportion compared to fiber and protein, then basically we have a sugar crash, right? So think about that, that high you get from having carbohydrates, like, oh, I have energy, and then all of a sudden this low. And that's what causes fatigue most often, is just your fluctuations in your blood sugar. And when I have clients really focus in on eating more protein and eating more vegetables with, fiber and fruits and whole grains, they tend to have a lot less fatigue because they're, number one, they're eating more frequently, but they're making sure to choose foods that are going to complement the carbohydrates and not just the carbohydrates by themselves. Because most of us eat carbs by themselves, and then we wonder why we're still hungry or why we're eating more, or why we're tired. And a lot of that is because of too many carbs.
Great. So we are really at our last question now. I want to thank Jessica for all her amazing answers and for all the questions that were submitted. Thank you so much. The last question is from Wanda, and hopefully that you can use this to sort of tie up all your key messages, which are there foods to avoid in Parkinson's disease?
Ooh. I would say no. And I would say my answer to that is no, because I'm a true believer that anything can be eaten in moderation. But again, making sure you're filling up, 80% of your days and your weeks with some of the foods we've talked about today, making sure you're nourishing your body, your mind, your spirit in all those ways. But sometimes when we're nourishing our spirit, we need some of those good, fun foods that are nostalgic, like I mentioned earlier. And so I think it's important to have those foods, but again, in moderation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I just want to thank Jessica so much for all that fantastic information. I want to thank everyone for participating in today's discussion. It was really a very rich discussion, and one that hopefully can inform people and how they live their lives with Parkinson's. So thank you so much. If you know someone who missed today's program, if you joined late, if you like to watch again, this recording will be available later today on our YouTube channel. So please go there, and there's going to be lots of information posted there about recipes and other things that Jessica talked about today. So don't forget when you're there to subscribe to APDA's YouTube channel, and you can watch new videos and live broadcasts as well. So for any additional information and resources, please visit our website at apdaparkinson.org. And I also want to alert you that our next Dr. Gilbert hosts will be taking place on October 23rd. I'll be hosting Dr. Jose Alberto Palma, who is an expert in Parkinson's disease and autonomic dysfunction. We'll be talking about blood pressure control, autonomic dysfunction, and Parkinson's. So please register today and join that broadcast. Now be sure to stick around for a few final messages. Before I go, I want to thank again our guest, as well as all of you for joining us. And we hope to see you again on another APDA program. Have a great rest of the afternoon.
Hi, I'm Leslie Chambers, the President and CEO of the American Parkinson Disease Association. Each month across the country, APDA is providing support groups, exercise classes, and educational programs like this one to support the Parkinson's disease community. You can find all of our upcoming virtual events on our website at apdaparkinson.org/events. If you enjoyed today's broadcast, I hope you will consider making a donation to help keep programs like this possible. Your gift can help APDA support people living with PD through local programs, reliable resources, and groundbreaking research designed to find treatments and ultimately the cure for Parkinson's disease. Please donate today at apdaparkinson.org/donate. And thank you so much for your support.